In the 1980s, the Miami Hurricanes' mental toughness, attitude, and swagger rewrote the rules of college football and created one of the sport's most memorable dynasties. Here's how they did it.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this episode, we'll talk about Miami's hopeful and eventual return to greatness. But let's chat about the mental and spiritual toughness it took for Miami to reach the top of that mountain in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Because with one of our special guests today, we're going to get the insight on the mental makeup of Miami during their glory days. And to help us introduce our special guest, we're getting a 2-for-1 this week. We already had the Truth Teller Tuesday. We got a bonus Truth Teller Thursday. Bruce Warner, how we feeling today?
I'm feeling great, and I'm happy to have our guest on here because he should have been here Tuesday, but he had an issue. We forgive him, but he's here now.
Well, he had a very important reason not to be here.
And I think that I know a lot about those guys back in the day, but he knows more than I know. He's got a lot more insight than I do. So anyway, he's a friend to everybody. He's my friend, and I'm happy he's my friend. Father Leo is our guest today.
Good morning, Alex. Good morning, Bruce, and thank you for your friendship.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, we have a lot of questions for you. One of the ones I want to know, if you know, because I know Alex probably won't even ask this. What, if anything, did you know about those so-called bounties that they had on certain players? You know what I'm talking about. Don't act like you don't, because you do. They had bounties on a lot of these Notre Dame players and things like that. And there was bags on the sideline. What do you know, if anything, about that? I mean, there's a higher power watching you, but don't worry about it. You're not going to be in trouble.
I can only tell you that in every athletic contest or group or entity, I don't care what it is, there are people who, how shall I say it, are looking for incentives to play better, play harder, with more intensity. And again, I don't know whether that's a wager. I don't know if that's something that's more lucrative or an offer or a position. Anything that's going to entice someone to perform to the best of their ability. Now, did they happen? That's the rumor I've heard. That's some of the talk amongst the team. In fact, I remember one time there was a reporter for a local newspaper who was going to write a column about me holding what would have been the bounty or an envelope filled with an incentive to get the best player with the best hit on someone, a reward for doing so. And as I confessed to the reporter, I said, I would be adverse to anything that you would even publish or write about that was incriminating of me, because number one, every one of those players entrusted me with a former championship ring, a gold chain, jewelry, take the diamonds out of there. So my pockets were lined with things which were valuable to them because they knew they were going to get it back at the end of the game. We had sometimes our locker rooms, especially on the road, invaded and people's items were stolen. So entrusted with the priest, and I carried it around. So I said, if you're going to accuse me of carrying anything, accuse me of carrying their jewelry and their valuables. So they didn't run the story.
Oh, they didn't
well said. And the reason why Father Leo, who joins us, why he was in position to hold these valuables and have such a relationship with these players. He was the long-serving team chaplain for the Miami Hurricanes and for the Miami Dolphins. Like Leo was on the sidelines literally for all 58 games of Miami's 58-game home winning streak. He was a part of at least 4 national championship teams at Miami, right, Leo?
That's correct. I'm glad you bring that up, Alex. In 1983, when the full-time team priest, Father Frank Lachera, God rest his soul, couldn't make 2 of the games, in particular, the game against Purdue in the Orange Bowl and the following week against Notre Dame, Howard Schnellenberger asked me to fill in as team priest. And I was saying earlier, coincidentally, those were the only two shutouts of the entire 1983 season, which, as you know, some people in sports are superstitious. So before the Orange Bowl game against Nebraska, Coach Schnellenberger invites me to come to the sidelines for that game. And I deferred because Father Frank Scherer was full-time chaplain, and I certainly didn't want to invade his space. So when University of Miami went up 17-0 earlier in the game, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, don't tell me they can pitch a shutout against the number one running offense in the NCAA. But eventually, Miami won. It didn't end as a shutout, but that first half, it was close.
Yeah, that was a great first half. They won. We had him on the show too. We've had, right, Calhoun's been on our show.
Mhm.
Kenny Calhoun. He was the hero of that. In fact,
He
both
was.
did the same thing. That may be the single most important single play in the history of Miami football, knocking down that pass.
Didn't it change the course of that University of Miami? Here's a
Sure it
program that
did.
was on the cusp of being terminated.
Right.
It was very close. After Lou Saban had come along and got some of the great recruits that he did, Lester
Yeah.
Williams,
Mr. Williams, yeah.
Jim Kelly. I mean, the list is, he changed with the recruiting that he did. He set a platform for Howard Schnellenberger to come in and build upon.
Mhm.
And it took off with that deflection of that pass. It changed the dynamics of the entire program.
Right, it did, because otherwise, who knows what would have happened? They made it to the title game, but and then when Howard left the following year, when Jimmy came in, what they lose 4 and 5 games? They blew a lot of games.
Oh,
Everything turned around completely. We were all scared. That was a
the
one and done.
1984 season was extremely challenging.
Yes,
There was
it
a
was.
team. There was a team that was coming off the national championship in '83. Okay, and in April they had the spring game, and they used to play the alumni. The former University of Miami football players would play in a scrimmage or a spring game at the end of the spring practice against the former football players.
Right.
In that particular game, Julio Cortez played outside linebacker. He was on the national championship team, went to Christopher Columbus High School, for his ACL. And I remember how despondent and upset he was about that incident. But he would come back and play in the '84 season. So after that, it wasn't long before Coach Schnellenberger resigned to join a defunct, which never materialized, football league there in Miami. And in June, Jimmy Johnson comes in from Oklahoma State to be the next head football coach at the University of Miami. And to many of the players who were endeared to Coach Schnellenberger and the staff, Jimmy came into a situation in which he was obligated to keep a lot of the people on the staff who were there previously to him. So Howard already had around him a nucleus of people, support staff and otherwise, who did it the Howard Schnellenberger way. So when now you bring in a new head coach, I don't care what organization you're running, it sets the dynamics differently. So when
Right.
Coach Johnson came in and started a different pattern or way of doing things, a lot of people didn't find that something they wanted to pursue, something they wanted to get in line with. So there was a little bit of acrimony. Now it's interesting. We opened up the '84 season on a Monday night against Auburn
Against
in the
Auburn.
in the kickoff classic.
Right.
They had some guy by the name of Bo Jackson and
Yep.
Brent Fullwood in
Mhm.
the backfield. They were ranked number 1 in the country. So
You think
we
wasn't
go
that
up
the
to
9-7 game? It was not a great offensive game.
no,
We beat them.
no,
though.
it was. I think we might have beat them by less than in single digits. I can't remember the score, but we played them on a Monday night in the Meadowlands, which was then Giants Stadium, where the Jets played too.
Right.
Defunct now. And 5 days later, on a Saturday, we go to Tampa to play a home game against the
The
Florida Gators
Gators. Yeah.
Mhm.
with like a minute and 29 seconds left to go in the game.
We're losing by
We're
2.
losing.
Yep.
Right. So Bernie Kosar starts the next offensive series passing from his own end zone. leads the team down the field. We score a touchdown. We're ahead. Florida comes back on the field, and their quarterback throws an interception to Tolbert Bain, who takes it all the way back.
You're right.
We win the game.
Yep.
Love it.
So that's 5 days later. A week later, we're in Ann Arbor, Michigan, playing in the big house.
Yep.
We're playing in Michigan, in Ann Arbor. We lose. So we played Auburn, Florida, and Michigan.
Incredible.
In 12 days.
We have the privilege of being joined here by Father Leo Armbrust, who was an absolute staple of the Miami Hurricanes program. You probably remember seeing Father Leo on the sidelines in the U documentary. And we want to talk with Father Leo when we come back about some of these incredible players who used to grace the field for Miami, his relationship with them. You want to keep it locked right here. We got the truth teller with us. We got Father Leo. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We have the privilege of being joined by Father Leo. So, Leo, I think a good way to kind of connect all those young Miami fans out there, the folks in their 20s with, the old heads like us. Everyone saw the playmaker Michael Irvin on the sidelines for most of Miami games last year. And you talk about superstitious. He was wearing the same T-shirt every game that he attended. And we saw how animated Michael was and everything. Of course, you were on the sidelines, and I'm sure counseling him and other players while Irvin was playing. What was he like back in the 80s, Leo?
Michael's always been a very intense player. On the field, he was as competitive as anyone else you could ever imagine. He radiated that not only in play, but also in practice. He didn't take time off. I think that was the key to Michael's success. He had such a conviction to be the very best at what he was doing. And he was, I think more than anything, he was afraid to fail. That was a motivation for him to exceed whatever other limits people would impose upon him. First, God blessed him with incredible athletic abilities, but deeper within him, he had a level of determination that everyone recognized, and everyone had to admire and respect in him. I mean, I've seen him in games when other players were getting injured or hurt, and they would be over on the bench and sitting it out for a while or for a play or didn't feel they could go back in, where Michael went over there and read the riot act to them about getting back into the game.
Right.
So
he was infectious, and he did that in the Florida State game on the road when we were losing in the first half, and he went into the huddle and said, "This is not over." And they wound up winning that game. He caught a touchdown pass, and he beat Deion Sanders down the sidelines.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. And if you look real closely, I'm standing there because I always stood at the far end.
Yes, you did.
If the offense was down there, whatever it was, I'm always at the opposite end because you didn't want to get run over. Trust me. I know. I mean, ask John Ruth. He had his ACL torn out in a game in, I think it was BYU. The sidelines can be extremely dangerous. But I want to go back to something you just intimated. Michael's intensity came from a depth within him. And let me tell you who else had that same level of inspiration and motivation.
Jerome?
And I've seen it was Ed Reed.
Right.
Recall the locker room scene at FSU when he was hurt and they went out and won the second half. Let me tell you who else I've been watching him since he came to the University of Miami, Cam Ward. When
Yes.
he had an incredible impact on his teammates. You can see that. If you watch a person long enough, you realize they have put themselves in a leadership position. And the only way they're going to stay there is by the way they perform, their attitude, the extra work they put in. There was no questioning those three men's impact on the rest of their team.
Yeah, you know who else had that, but quietly, was Russell Maryland.
Oh,
Russell wasn't a talker, but Russell's my friend. We went to the Super Bowl together, and of course, he got picked the first pick in the draft by Jimmy. But Russell was a quiet leader. But when they messed with him before the Cotton Bowl, and they said, you didn't deserve this trophy," they took it upon themselves to go out and beat the hell out of Texas, which is what they took it personally. And Russell didn't have a big mouth. He wasn't loud like Jerome. Jerome would just get in your face. You knew that too. But when Russell got taken out by Stan Thomas before the Cotton Bowl, they all rallied around him. Boy, was
Bruce,
that
you
game
remember
a
his name?
beatdown.
Yeah, he was talking a lot of smack before that Cotton Bowl game.
Yeah, and Russell just dominated the line of scrimmage. He was like possessed. But he was like that too, and he's the one that brought Cortez around, because Cortez came in, he was overweight, he was lazy, and he took him under his wing, and we saw what happened to the late Cortez. God rest his soul, because I was very close to Cortez. But yeah, there's some leaders on those teams that just took over.
And you see, both of you want me to reflect upon the mental aspect and the spirituality of this group that was part of the University of Miami's success and tradition. There was a bond that they themselves formed. Like, I couldn't go into them and inflict upon them something they didn't already have. I just learned how to appeal to it. And the most important thing you can do in any organization is to make people feel important, that they're contributing. And everyone, whether you were a recognized star, a possible draft choice, or you were on the scout team, everyone knew that wore that orange, green, and white, that they were a contributor to the success of the program.
Absolutely.
Look, here's one example. Mike Azar, who was the center, the snapper for field goals, extra points, and punting. He never gets the recognition for the position he held in the success of our championship years at the University of Miami.
Yep.
Or Tim Kalal, who was the holder for field goals for Carlos Huerta. I mean, so what I'm saying is everyone knew they had a role to play, and you didn't take a day or a time off. The people that were least known or recognized amongst the fan base were recognized and appreciated by their teammates. That is what you teach. That is what you promote.
They would beat the hell out of each other, and then 5 minutes later, they're having dinner together. They left it in the locker room and took it out on the other team.
Well, here was the recipe for success, and I give a lot of credit to Coach Schnellenberger for instituting it. And again, it was continued through Jimmy Johnson's efforts to make practice as difficult as it possibly could be.
Yep. The phrase "us against the world" was true. Absolutely true. Right? Talk about that, Leo. It's true.
Well, there was a mentality, and again, you hear a lot of other sports teams say the same thing. When the public starts airing some grievances about the success of any one particular organization, they're going to pick at them. They're going to find something to critique or some incident where they expound upon that it's a flaw, it's an idiosyncrasy, it's a characteristic of what's wrong with our society. And again, once the University of Miami got to be as successful as they were, there were many people in the profession, both as players, coaches, and even writers or people in the media, who took exception to the fact that the University of Miami was not shy about announcing how successful and what braggadocio they had or what swagger they possessed. They weren't shy about it. We let you know about it. And as Melvin used to say, we'd like to go back in your backyard, turn your garbage can over, and so forth. People didn't like that.
Well, that's not what I heard. I heard some really bad stuff.
they I'm how shall I say it? I'm being I'm I'm anesthetizing some of it,
Yes,
toning it
you
down,
are.
numbing it
You
down. Better
are.
to say that. So again, there was this self-confidence that people misinterpreted as a swagger. You call it what you want,
Right.
but as a professional athlete or even one who's an amateur athlete, if you don't have the self-confidence to get out there and do what you're being asked to do,
Mm-hmm.
then someone is going to take advantage of you. They're going to use your weakness against you. They're going to inflict further doubt that you can't cover them that day, you can't tackle them, you're not going to make any catches, you can't block. And
Mm-hmm.
again, let's not doubt for a moment the conversations that are held in the field of play,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what it is. In fact, I say the only game in which emotion cannot play any part is golf. So
Yeah.
I say this: every other sport, whether it's tennis, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, horseshoes, somebody's going to talk smack.
Right.
Somebody's going to say something and it's going to set you off to get you out of your game or whatever. And guess what? When you're in that level of competition, let's not pretend it isn't serious. When
Right.
people's careers depend upon it, when you're talking about a Super Bowl, when you're talking about playoffs, when
Right.
people do it for a living, for their money, for the money they make, guess what?
I want to get into when we come back, and Leo, he brought up Cam Ward a little while ago for kind of being a throwback to some of these guys from the 80s and 90s, and I want to talk about the mentality it's going to take to kind of revisit those glory days, because it's not just about the actual football talent. I believe it's about the combination of individuals and how they bond together and the personalities. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Father Leo is with us, and Leo, it's one of the reasons why it's so fascinating to talk with you is you were a part of that history. You were on those sidelines. You were working with players, and of course, I got my guy Bruce here, who's very familiar, and he was a part of a lot of that history as well. Because I'm a historian when it comes to what made these guys so great back in the day, and I think that we talk about swagger, but just how player led those teams were and how they held each other accountable. I think is something Miami would like to recreate. And of course, Mario Cristobal, having been a part of that in the late 80s and early 90s, I think he knows what sort of personalities he needs. And yeah, Miami had a guy like that last year in Cam Ward. Just talk, Leo, about what you think Mario Cristobal is doing and in the way he's recruiting these players and bringing some of these guys in through the portal. Do you think Miami can reach a point again where they're player-led like they used to be?
Well, let's be honest. The first thing you have to have is talent.
Mm-hmm.
You can have
Yeah.
all the other things you can try to do to instill competition in your team and a sense of self confidence, but if you don't have the talent, you're not going to win many games. So in reality, Mario is an incredible recruiter. Now I've known him since he graduated from high school at
Right.
Christopher Columbus,
Columbus.
and
Right.
and know his brother Lou when he came out of Columbus. In fact, Columbus has contributed an immense amount of number of football players at the University of Miami. Goes way back, all the way to Lou Pytel
Mm-hmm.
and Jim Cox. So there's a tradition of some high schools feeding into that program, whether it's Northwestern, whether it's Norland, whether it's Edison, whether it's
Central.
Central. Can't forget Central, Roland Smith,
Rolling. Yeah.
Columbus. There are some high schools there in the Miami community, Palmetto, South Fork, you name it, who have made enormous contributions to the players in that program at the University of Miami. So the talent base in Miami-Dade County is so incredible that all the major colleges and universities around the country know where to come from if they're looking for talent. It almost rivals Texas in the historical Friday Night Lights or California. Florida is a operation where you got St. Thomas Aquinas, Cardinal Gibbons, you got so many schools in Broward County, Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach County, where I live, so many high schools that football is number one. And so those programs are feeding into colleges and universities, not only at the University of Miami and Florida, UCF, FSU, USF. Everybody comes here to go shopping for the best players. So let's start with talent. Mario's recognized as an incredible recruiter. He was that way at Alabama, he was that way at Oregon, and he's continuing that same success at the University of Miami. Now, once you get that talent, it's incredibly important that you develop it. So the struggle, and I think the challenge for any coach in Mario's position, whether it was Howard Schnellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, Butch Davis, Larry Coker, succeeded all of them. Once you get the talent, you got to do something with it. Is where the onus falls on the coaching staff. So as long as you can get it, that's the
Yes, the
first step.
coaching staff. And I think they
Then
got
you
it
got to
this
be
year,
able
I
to
hope.
and you got to be able to develop it, and that's a key ingredient. So let's surround yourself with the best coaches and support staff that you can find, and that means everybody. That means your head trainer. That means your equipment manager. Everybody who's in the position, those players, and the outcome of success has to be the best you can find. There's no substitute. So that's where. And so after a while, it's not about the X's and O's. It's about getting your players and everyone else around you invested in your vision of where this program is going and what it's doing. And when you can get everybody on the same page, then they feel now that they're part of it. And there's nothing they wouldn't do, even going through a wall to become successful, not just for themselves, but everyone else around them.
Let's close with this here with Father Leo, because you're obviously a big part of the program's past, but you also very much keep in tune with what's going on in the present. So I would love your opinion on coming off of, a 10-win season last year, but ultimately Miami didn't reach their goals in the postseason. You replaced Cam Ward with Carson Beck, but I would argue most of the roster, it looks better to me on paper than it did even last year. So what are your feelings, Leo, heading into 2025? How do you think Miami's going to perform this year?
Well, they got a tough schedule. You figure they open up on August 31st with Notre Dame. Then they've got two games that I don't think are going to be that competitive. You can't underestimate Florida coming in the fourth game. I think they're going to be a lot better with this quarterback Lagway than they even were last year. And I wouldn't underestimate the rest of the schedule. They only have, I believe, 4 away games this entire season, if I'm not mistaken. 4?
Yeah, they have 8 home games.
So in other words, they have 8 home games. 8 home games. Imagine that. The last 2 games of the season are away.
All right.
They're not cakewalks. And and one of those games that's going to be laying low for them is SMU, where Brett Lashley is. I don't doubt for a moment that's going to be one of the more competitive contests. So if you ask me, I'm not very good at being a prognosticator or forecasting. There's a lot that depends upon injuries and circumstances beyond my control. I know this is going to be a tough year. It's not going to be very, very easy, no matter how many people are coming back. A lot of the responsibility is going to come upon the quarterback and how his recovery has come, whether he can, adjust to the heat of South Florida as compared to Georgia, and a number of other factors too. So he's got 8 home games, 8 home games. So there really aren't too many excuses when you're going to have the support of having your home field advantage in 8 of those contests. And you would want them to win every one of those 8. Okay, that's 8. They got to win 4 on the road. Now,
the Florida State game is coming off a break. We have a bye week. Now, usually we don't do too well coming off byes, but we'll have an extra week to get ready to go to Tallahassee. But to me, and I've told Alex this, and I think our listeners have heard this a million times, we got to beat Notre Dame. You got to start off the season by setting the tone and beating Notre Dame at home. The last time they came here and played at night, we destroyed them. But we've got to beat them. And that's a springboard for me for the entire season. Because if they lose that game, all of a sudden they've now lost 4 out of 5. And it's not good for Mario. He's going to start feeling the heat. So I think that's the springboard game. We've got to win that game.
There's a lot of pressure on him this year.
Yes.
And there's a lot of pressure on him. I mean, we have to be fair and we have to be honest. He's had, let's see, 4 different coordinators in the 3 years he's been there, offensively and defensively. So there's been changes in the staff. Plus, there, like there is with a lot of programs, especially in this day and age, when people change as easily as the players who leave from this university to another university in a span of 9 or 10 months, and they're now with another program. It's not unusual for coaches to do the same thing. They get better opportunities, a whole bunch of reasons. So with that, how do you keep a staff intact? Your best staff, if they're not being, again, too,
Right.
it happens on every level. The more successful you are, the more opportunities your coaching staff has, bigger opportunities for themselves in their own
Right.
professional careers. So they're gone. So that's the price of success. So again, keeping a staff together, keeping them intact, because you're trying to get everyone to row the boat in the same direction. Everyone, not just the players, not just the staff, the coaches, but your whole staff. Everybody is committed to a single vision. This is what we're about. Like when Jimmy went on a away game, it was purely business. There was no
Yep.
time to interact with the family in the hotel, none of that stuff. It's a business trip, which is all about business. I mean, I was talking to Alonzo about this last week, and he said, I remember my parents wanted to, and my grandparents wanted to see me in Tallahassee. I had to sneak out into the back door of the kitchen to say hello to them for 5 minutes because I wasn't allowed to see them up in the hotel lobby.
Right.
Oh, man.
That level, as you're saying, Bruce, that level of concentration and focus and discipline, setting up boundaries. If you want to be successful, not everybody's going to buy into your image unless they see results. And
Right.
results will dictate to them this is why we do it. Because
Right.
we're
And the
winning.
last thing, Leo, is continuity. Now they have a lot of new guys on defense. I think they're better than what they had, but we had Leon Cersei on one of the first shows we ever did, and he kept on saying, you know what? These guys have never played it down together as a unit. And that's something that we don't have on our defensive side of the ball. We have a lot of new guys. So they may be talented, but are they on the same page at the Notre Dame game? I don't know.
See, and this is what you're talking about, Bruce and Alex, and these are points that deal with, as you were saying earlier, about the mental and spiritual aspects.
Mm-hmm.
All for one and one for all.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build that mentality? How do you build that kind of loyalty if people are coming in like a turnstile out of an organization? But this is what you were dealing with. Everyone's
Right.
dealing with it. How do
That's
you
true.
get everyone on the same page of the hymnal to sing the same song? It's not just practicing together, and it's incredibly important, but getting to everyone to buy in to what you're trying to do as a group and as a unit.
Right.
Everybody.
And you got to win, because we've been talking about Mario and the recruiting and the portal and all these things he's done correctly, and the coaching changes. They have to win. Now, you just said it 2 minutes ago. He's under a lot of pressure now. He has to win, and he's got to win now, because I don't care if he's going to ever get fired or not because of his contract, but the fans are watching this, and losing 3 out of 4 didn't help. And if they lose to Notre Dame at home at night with a rocking Hard Rock Stadium, that doesn't bode well. And you just don't want to start off like that, because you need confidence and you need that swagger back. We've got to go out there. I'm not supposed to say this word on the air. We got to kick their ass. We do.
Well, Bruce, this is the one thing. If your only motivation is fear, you're not going to be very successful in life.
Right.
That's right.
You have to look for another motivation.
Right.
It's this mentality on, I won't quit on you ever as my teammate, and I don't expect you to quit on me. And when you can start instituting that sense of commitment as a group, then no team will ever quit. You don't win 58 straight in a game, in a stadium, over 58 games, 9 years. There were 9 years that people who are University of Miami Hurricane fans went to the Orange Bowl game and never saw a home loss in
Yes.
9 years.
Yep.
9 years. How do you comprehend that?
Unbelievable.
9 years. And I was there the last time we lost against Florida was the last loss, and then over that we went all the way to Washington 9 years later. 9 years.
Wow.
I went to that stadium and never saw us lose. Look at all those fans. They were spoiled.
Unbelievable.
Right.
How spoiled. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But by the way, Leo, I wanted to give you the opportunity before we run and give our listeners the opportunity, because you told us off air, and this is so gracious, that, of course, counseling is a big part of what you do, and you have offered to make yourself open. If any of our listeners and viewers, if they need someone to talk to, where can they find you, Leo?
Okay. Let me say this. I can give you my email address if I can do that. It's
Sure.
LFA, Leo Francis Armbrust, LFA 1360 at yahoo.com. I work in the addiction community quite a bit. And I missed your program on Tuesday because one of the people I sponsor in AA had a real major crisis. So had to get him to an AA meeting, and that took up a course of the day. And I didn't got a chance to apologize and say, can't do this. That became a priority. So I have been working with people who are in the addiction issues of society today, whether it's alcohol, drugs, you name it, whatever it might be. So, and I have a number of facilities that I refer people to that I believe are credible, and make sure they get the help they're looking for. In fact, it's in my belief that the 12 steps of AA are without question the best spiritual program that has ever been devised.
Wow.
Serious.
Listen, when
free,
we get off,
and it's someone in
when we get off, Leo, stay on. I need your phone number. I got to talk to you about my stepson.
Okay,
But
no
go
problem.
ahead. Okay.
Well, we appreciate Father Leo for joining us, all the great stories and the great memories. The truth teller, Bruce Warner, as always. I am Alex Donno. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Canes. Make us your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, check out The Portal. Our good friend Brian Smith does an awesome job covering all things NIL, recruiting, transfer portal. By the way, we're going to be watching one. Samarian Wingo, 4-star wide receiver. He's back on the radar from Miami, and at 2 p.m. today, he's going to be announcing between Miami, South Carolina, and Florida. Hopefully we get some good news later on today, and if that happens, we'll talk to you again next time, probably later today on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.